ॐ अखण्डमण्डलाकारम् व्याप्तं येन चराचरम् तत्पदं दर्शितं येन तस्मै श्री गुरवे नमः। अज्ञानतिमिरान्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मीलितं येन तस्मै श्री गुरवे नमः। नमामि धन्वन्तरिमादिदेवम् सुरासुरैर्वन्दितपादपद्मम् लोके जरारुग्भय मृत्युनाशम् दातारमीशम् विविधौषधीना। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्ति। My pranams to all here. Very honored to be present here today to share my thoughts on the schools and thinkers of the great tradition of Ayurveda. We already had a session on the sources and the textbooks, and it's very difficult to avoid overlaps between these two topics, because they are just like two sides of the same coin. You have the sources and the text on the other side, and the schools and thinkers on the other side. So kindly excuse me if there are some overlaps, but it will also reinforce your understanding. But of course, we will also look at the texts, because they cannot be avoided when you are referring to the schools and thinkers, but we will look at it from another perspective. So, Ayurveda is a very old tradition, and when you look at schools and thinkers, it's a bit challenging because we cannot see into the origins of this tradition. It's all lost in antiquity. We can't see through the mists of time. And the earliest textbooks that are available are already well developed and highly systematized. If you look at Charaka Samhita, Sushruta Samhita, and look at their structure, it's quite obvious that they went through a lot of editing. And we are not able to see them in their original form, and we're not able to trace back. So a lot of this knowledge is lost. In fact, when you go through this whole process of rediscovering this evolutionary history of Ayurveda, you will be pained to realize how much has been lost. What has been preserved is only a small fraction of that whole knowledge system. And that preservation can be attributed to this phenomenal oral tradition. The oral tradition in India is phenomenal. And also the manuscripts. India has one of the largest collection of medical manuscripts in the world. And a Western scholar had to do this work, compile a monumental history of Indian medical literature in 5 volumes, in which there is a section where all the teachers and authorities related to Ayurveda have been compiled. I mean, it's quite mind-boggling to see what is known about the individuals who contributed and all the unknown people who have contributed. It's tremendous. Ayurveda was not created by one or two people. When we think about Ayurveda, we think of only Charaka or Sushruta. Charaka and Sushruta itself represent the summation of a traditions. that were contributed by many, many eminent, researchers and scholars and whatever you would call them. They are ancient people. So this is something I commonly use. Since you may not have seen it before, you wouldn't be bored, I guess. But this is one of my favorite slides where I try to show this evolutionary perspective of Ayurveda. It's very symbolic. It's time I updated it also. You can see the whole idea is to show that both geographically and chronologically, the whole country has contributed to the development and evolution of Ayurveda. Every nook and corner. I've just put a few texts trying to show that from Kashmir to Kanyakumari we have, and on either sides, the east and the west coast, everywhere there is some contribution to Ayurveda through. And if you were to put all the texts, you won't see India. I mean, you will cover every part of the country will be covered by the medical literature that was generated. So for such medical literature to be churned over thousands of years, you need a lot of people, a lot of schools and thinkers, which is our topic today. And across the time period, there is no time period. You can see on the other side the annular ring of the tree representing the flow of time. And at every major chronological landmark, a new textbook was created. So it's not that it's only Charaka and Sushruta. They also underwent a lot of editing. And I will discuss a little history about that also from the perspective of the people who contributed to it. So Ayurveda is an amazing tradition, and actually it is only in the last 200-300 years that it has not been really evolving. Today it is being validated and used. It's not evolving because that internal thought process has come to a stop. At the time of colonial period, now Ayurveda is mostly promoted on nationalist sentiments, not necessarily because people believe it is useful, but that's okay because that is keeping it surviving. At some point, I hope we will really realize what it is worth for and reactivate that thought process that brought it all the way along. Today, people are just, it's like, a remnant of the past, and we are trying to go and harvest whatever we can from that. It's like a dead body with a lot of jewels, and people are going and doing an exhumation and trying to take whatever is valuable and useful. That is a kind of research that is happening today. But what is really needed is that spirit of ancient thinking, which I'd like to present before you today. And for this, we need the whole nation to think about Ayurveda, because Ayurveda is our heritage. It's not just for the Ayurvedic community. As a nation, we have to take stock of what Ayurveda is in terms of our heritage and how we can bring it back to life. So before the exhumation is over and everything is, taken away, that will be a one-time harvesting. After that, everything is gone. You will have something in a new form. But Ayurveda has a potential to continue to guide and continue to bring original thoughts and new paradigms and perspectives in the world of medicine. So you must have heard, if you look at the Ayurvedic tradition, there has been a lot of attempt to systematize and harmonize different schools of thinking. So much so that we think that, so people talk about the three great texts of Brihatraya, and it gives us the wrong impression that there were only three texts. Those three texts became very universal because they tried to harmonize diverse schools of thought. And it's very important to understand that the texts represent actually diverse schools of thought. There was an attempt to systematize and bring, different thought processes together and create some kind of a universal understanding in Ayurveda. There's so much of diverse approaches in thinking than you might think. They were arguing, they were having differences of opinion, different schools of thought were there. So much so that Charaka says, Vividhani hi shastrani bishajam pracharanti loke. There are so many sciences of the physicians that are prevalent in the world. So much so that Charaka is struggling to see what should we accept and what we cannot accept. So how do we, he puts a criteria, an 18-point criteria to decide what is acceptable medical knowledge and what is not acceptable medical knowledge. So you can see a tradition where a lot of people were thinking, creating new ideas, proposing their own theories about what is the human body, what is health, what is disease, and how treatments should be done. And from all that diversity emerged, the core teachings of Ayurveda, which are called as the Brihatrayi, Charaka Samhita, Sushruta Samhita, and Ashtanga Sangraha. If you look at the texts, these are the three texts that came to be known as Brihatrayi. But I would rather like to look at the Brihatrayi as three individuals, Charaka, Sushruta, and Vakbhada. We will look at them as the triad of great thinkers who brought all this diverse knowledge of Ayurveda into a comprehensive and coherent framework. Now you can see here Charaka Samhita is generally dealing with medicine, non-surgical approaches to healing, whereas Sushruta Samhita is focused on surgery. And Ashtanga Sangraha Sangraha means to bring together, collect and compile and bring together. Samhita also means the same thing. Samhita means samahati, to bring everything together in one place. So it's not one person's view. Sangraha also means a compilation. So all existing knowledge, I'd like to look at this as something like a mega systematic review of all existing knowledge. Today we talk about systematic reviews, where everything, but systematic reviews are on one topic. Here we have a review of everything that existed. So Vagbhada tells, he is referring to an information explosion. It is time. Tebhyo ati vipragirnebhya praya saratarochaya krite ashtanga hridayam nati sankshepa vistaram. So he says, Tebhyo ati vipragirnebhya. Ati vipragirnebhya uses in the superlative degree. Ati vipragirnebhya, extremely diverse and confusing. He's telling, Pratitantrabhi yoge tu purushayusha samshaya. If you want to study one text, your whole lifetime will be lost. So today we are talking about information explosion. But Vagbhada is talking about this in the 7th century CE, that you have so much of information available that you cannot even read a fraction. And the whole focus on what is Saratara Uchaya. Sarataram means the essence of the essence. Saratara Uchaya Ashtanga Hridayam Kriyade. I am creating this textbook which captures only what is essential so that you can understand what is needed in a lifetime. Alpascha Ananta Shastram Bahuvetidavyam Alpascha Kalo Bahavascha Vighna Yat Sarabhudam Tadupasidavyam. This was also a very big ideal in our tradition. That Ananta Shastram, knowledge is infinite. Bahuvetidavyam, there's so much to learn. Alpascha Kalo, we have only a little time. And Bahavascha Vighna, and so many obstacles. Even to take care of our body, you have to spend so much hours in a day, and then what is left for these pursuits is very little. So yet sarabhudam tadupasidavyam. So all the authors were focused on being very, talking about the essence. The textbooks were very compact, but very profound. It's not like today's works where you have, it's more descriptive and a lot of information, overwhelmingly elaborate, whereas the textbooks are very brief. So we know that Indian thinkers created the method of sutra for codification. And sutras were so compact that you needed bhashyas to even understand them. Alpaksharam asandigdham saravat vishwato mukham astobhyam anavadyam cha sutram sutravido vidu. It's a very beautiful definition. So Ayurveda also, we have one section of the text called Sutrasthanam, where everything is codified in sutra form. And it was said that for the intelligent person, they need to study only the Sutrasthana. They can become a Vaidya. But for the dull-witted, the rest of the text is there, which elaborates further. So if you still don't understand, you can read a Vyakhya, which is like a bhashya or a commentary of the text. And according to different time periods, more and more bhashyas had to be created. So this is what created this whole lineage of schools and thinkers. There are many other textbooks like Kashyapa Samhita dealing with pediatrics, Bhela Samhita with general medicine, but they have all been lost. The Kashyapa Samhita is a textbook on pediatrics. Just imagine 3000 years ago, we had a branch of pediatrics. Pediatrics was founded only a few hundred years ago in modern medicine. So, father of pediatrics, you will see some Westerners' name dated to maybe 17th, 18th century. We have Kashyapa. Who remembers Kashyapa? This is a big gap in education. We should know that it's a textbook on pediatrics, very elaborate, but it's available only in fragmented form. We have lost it. And then Bhela Samhita, which according to Vagbada, Bhela was not so good as Agnivesha, his contemporary. So Agnivesha was another of the earlier, I'll come to that, I will explain that. Sorry for jumping into these names. Without a background, you will not understand. Some of the earliest students of Ayurveda, Agnivesha, Bhela, there were 6 people, 6 of them. I'll introduce them a little later. And Bhela's text was generally considered to be not, as good as Agnivesha. So that's why it lost popularity. And so it was not preserved. But you take a glimpse at Bhela Samhita, you find a lot of new and interesting information that you don't see in the other Samhitas. So you are pained to see that a lot of information has been lost with the loss of these textbooks. A lot of details have been lost because those teachers and scholars were always trying to capture the essence. And so the detailed descriptions are gone. So you have a very graphic summary of what is circulation, but the details are not there. So the details were probably there in other textbooks, which they eliminated because it was so difficult to write a textbook. It would take days and months to complete writing a textbook. Today, we can print anything, and in PDFs we are circulating all kind of junk everywhere. So today, situation is very different. We may not understand their difficulty of why they had to be so brief. So many other texts were also lost in the flow of time. And later, so I want to show this overall development of texts and the whole context so that we can understand the schools and thinkers and how and why they contributed in a particular way. So Madhava Nidana, there was a book dealing just with diagnostics, Sarangadhara Samhita just with pharmacy and pharmaceuticals, Bhava Prakasha with pharmacopoeia. So specialization also happened on the other side. So we see 2 movements. The Brihatrayi trying to consolidate and summate, the whole knowledge, and the Lakhutrayis, which were called as the lesser triads, again going to specialize. Because, when everything is generalized, we lose a lot of specific knowledge. So these 2 movements, the Brihatrayi, which was a first kind of compilation and consolidation, where a lot of details was eliminated and only the essence was presented, and then later again specialization in the Lakhutrayi into diagnostics, specific areas. So this, what we understand is that both of these approaches are actually necessary. We need to have both this, which we call as Nati Sankshepa Vistaram. Now, Ati Sankshepa shouldn't be too brief, nor Nati Vistaram should not be too elaborate also. So you can see that these thinkers, they worked with great, harmony and synergism throughout the whole evolution by elaborating and concising and preserving the knowledge in a balanced way. Is that clear? So this is the activity. And now we will look at, if you look at the schools of Ayurveda, so they are always working on this balance of not being too general or not being too specific. So today we know modern medicine, you start with MBBS, undergraduate level, you know a lot of things about the body. You go to PG, you know more about one part of the body, and when you do specialization, you know only about maybe the heart. And if you go to a cardiologist and ask him about your liver, then he said, I don't know, you have to see a hepatologist. So we are creating a kind of specialization today where we are losing the totality. Ayurveda thinkers were very concerned about this. They knew that too much of generalization was not enough, but they also knew that too much of specialization was also harmful. So they were trying to be in that golden space of, being broad enough, but also necessarily specific if needed. So in Ayurveda, there are two major schools which are called the Dhanvantariya Sampradaya, the Dhanvantari tradition, which is a surgical school, and the Atraya Sampradaya, which is the medical school. These are two old medical schools that have survived today. But there were other schools also which did not survive, which were all lost in the flow of time, because Ayurveda had about 8 medical specialities, basic specialities. They are based on a logic. Your body, childhood, adult, old age. 3 phases are there. So there are 3 specialities to deal with the body in childhood, in adulthood, and in old age. So these are called Bala Chikitsa. And Bala Chikitsa is dealing also with mother's health. You don't separate the mother and child. Today we have something called as mother and child health. Olden days, pediatrics was linked with gynecology and obstetrics also, because a mother and child cannot be separated. So in the old age, we have to treat the mother. The mother has to be given all the importance for the health of the child. So we had Kaumara Bhritya means Kumara Bharanam, means rearing a child. That's what it means. It's not pediatrics. Pediatrics means treating a child's illness. Kumara Bharana means rearing a child. It begins right from conception, how the mother should be, how the parenting should happen, how the child should be developed. Kumara means vulnerable. Kumarati, who is killed very easily. So the human baby is considered more vulnerable than other babies, in the animal world, where they survive without any support. But a human baby requires care and attention. So we need the family, we need all these things for a child to be nurtured. So we also get very holistic perspectives. So it's wrong to think about these branches as comparing with modern, translating them as pediatrics. We lose this total vision. So you have 3 branches for childhood. Adulthood is Kaya Chikitsa, general medicine. And old age is Jara Chikitsa or Rasayana. So you look at the human body in 3 phases of evolution. Then you are looking at the body structures. So we found that this part is very, very important. So one branch devoted just for head and neck. Any diseases affecting head and neck. This would include today's neurology, ophthalmology, dentistry, ENT, everything was one. These were called as Shalaka. Shalakya Tantra. Shalaka because they had to use probes to, poke inside and explore. So these were the people of Shalakya Tantra. Later Shalakya Tantra further specialized. So they discovered the importance of the brain and sense organs, which is like the headquarters of our whole body. So physical structures have to be preserved. And in Ayurveda, it was very well understood that mind and consciousness are different. Mind is in the head, in the brain. Consciousness is linked to the heart. So, when I say I, my hand automatically goes here. It doesn't go here. I've not seen, rarely, it's very unusual that you would say, I am. It's usually, you say that when you are in your ego, right? So when somebody is protesting, you can see their finger will go like this. But when you are speaking with love or affection, your hands will automatically go above your heart. So we knew that Hridayam Chetana Sthanam, but Shiras Talvandaragadam Sarvendriya Param Manaha. So the mind also, so we had a branch of psychiatry. Bhuta Vidya, it was called Bhuta Graha, because the biggest problem for the mind is the past, being stuck in the past. Bhuta Graha. All psychiatric diseases are, you are being seized by your past. You not come out of your past into the present. So we had one branch for that. And then there are two threats for the human body from the outside world. One is injuries. So to deal with that, this branch of surgery. Then there are poisons and toxins that can affect us from outside. And that we had Agada Tantra or toxicology. And finally, reproductive medicine. How to, because your body will not live for long. Prajatantum ma vivachetsi. It was considered a duty that every human being propagated by creating a child. So we had, so this was the overall framework of the 8 branches. So 8 of them were separate schools, but only 2 of them survived: general medicine and surgery. And the appendages of these other schools are there within this. So when Vagbhada wrote the Ashtanga Sangraha, that is why he called it as Ashtanga Sangraha. He not only brought the surgical and medical schools together, but he also brought the other 8 branches, which had almost already gone into oblivion. The original textbooks of those schools are not known. So I want to highlight, I mean, when you look at the schools of Ayurveda, how they evolved with this understanding of the human body, how they, diversified, and how a lot of it got lost. So why did it get lost? Because when a tradition is surviving for so long, there is the cultural fatigue, there is a fatigue of time itself. And then there were invasions, a lot of invasions. And then we had, India is one country which had to face with a lot of invasions. And these invasions also targeted many of this textbooks, knowledge. A lot of these manuscripts were destroyed. So even when we start looking at the schools, we are a bit, awestruck by the quantum of knowledge and information that has already been lost. So out of 8 branches, we have only 2 books representing 2 of these schools of thinking. So there are many, many great personalities of Ayurveda. It was created, Ayurveda has been created and propagated by a great lineage of teachers. And I believe that we need to pay homage to these teachers by reconstructing their lives, their personalities. This could inspire our new generation. Today we have images and pictures of lot of pioneers. I'm not against them. We should continue to keep them, even from other parts of the world. But we cannot forget these great teachers. Okay. So I have just put together some major names. Bharadwaja, the first teacher of Ayurveda; Agastya, the propagator of Siddha medicine in Tamil Nadu, but he was also a specialist in using metallic mercurial preparations; Agnivesha, who compiled the first Ayurvedic textbook; Bhela, who was a colleague of Agnivesha and who first proposed the theory of blood circulation. That circulation, blood not only goes out of the heart, but it also comes back. This is very clearly mentioned only in the Bhela Samhita, which is available only in a fragmented way. Then Sushruta, who wrote the first surgical treatise, but he was not the founder. The founder was Dhanvantari, who was a king of Banaras at that time. And that is very interesting. We will find that Ayurveda had a very student centric approach. The teachers never wanted their names on the books. They wanted the books to be known by the name of the student. So they were forward thinking. They said every student should change the name of the book by their name to show that they have contributed. They have taken it one step further. This is quite fascinating, isn't it? Today, there's so much of this thing. I mean, teachers are so, I mean, I don't want to blame anybody, but today we are kind of patronizing. I mean, students are not having that kind of freedom that I can see in Charaka Samhita. I'll narrate some encounters between the teachers and the students. It's so refreshing. The students are given so much of empowerment. The teacher is just disappearing into the back, saying, "This is for the because he has experienced the same from his teacher." So that is how the parampara goes. Everything is forward thinking. The student is empowered. So the earliest textbooks of Ayurveda are notes of students. The student creates the text, not the teacher. That is what the teacher shows. My student is better than me. So let the textbook become known in his name. This is true empowerment. The teacher is completely trying to make efforts to ensure that the student is better. The generation, next generation goes forward, not backward. So Vagbhada was the synthesizer, Kashyapa the pediatrician. All these names are fascinating, and we'll get introduced to all of them. Sharngadhara, the first pharmacist, Madhava, the diagnostician, Kashyapa, and Charaka, the great redactor. He was a great editor, and Dhanvantari, the propounder of the surgical school. And then we had also commentators. They also made very important contributions. A lot of secret knowledge of the texts came out because there were commentaries. And the commentaries, when they try to explain the texts, because the texts are very brief, when they try to explain the texts, they actually, develop many new theories. So I'll also show how that happens. So it is not enough. You cannot dismiss commentators as just, somebody who's writing a explanatory note. They have also made original contributions. So now I want to introduce some terms. When you look at schools, there are two terms, and they are very fascinating and interesting. They are sampradayas and paramparas. Have you heard of these terms? Do you know what is the difference? What is a sampradaya and what is a parampara? Sampradaya, the word sampradaya itself indicates what it is. Samyak pradhanam. Samyak pradhana, it's a system. When a school is created, they create a lot of norms and what today we would call as a curriculum or teaching methodology, a technology. So Shankaracharya says, Asampradaya with Sarva Shastra Vidavi Murkhavad Ubekshaniya. If you have not learned a Shastra by Sampradaya, Asampradaya with Sarva Shastra Vidavi, even if he is knowing all the Shastras, today most Western scholars are like that. They are Asampradayavits. They are very Sarva Shastravits. They will quote all the Shastras, but they don't have insight. Only if you study as per the Sampradaya, you will get insight. So Sampradaya is a teaching method. So Atreya Sampradaya. Samyak Pradhana. Samyak Pradhana is proper transfer of the knowledge. Because you may learn a lot of things. You may learn a lot of things, but you may not have that practical application, or you miss the essential things if you don't learn by Sampradaya. Like now, this is one thing. You can take the Charaka Samhita and read it day and night, even memorize all the verses and give all the Sanskrit meaning, but you won't be able to practice Ayurveda. You won't know what to do, how to treat a patient. So Sampradaya means there was a method of teaching technology that made sure that the student would become practical. The student will be able to apply this and get results. Shankaracharya says, Nischita phalavat vijnanotpadagatvam shastra pramanya lakshanam. If you don't get a result out of a shastra, then it is apramana. It may be written by anybody, but if you are giving a medicine and it is not working, then it's useless. So, Nischita phalavat vijnanotpadagatvam. So, a student should be able to apply that knowledge and get the result. Then it is pramana. Tad yatra asti tad pramanam. Yatra nasti tad apramanam. This is what Shankaracharya says. So, Ayurveda, schools of Ayurveda can be considered as Sampradaya. So, you can see here very early attempt to create education technology. Today we are talking about education technology, isn't it? Because knowledge cannot be transferred just by textbooks or some teachers. You need also a technology to transfer the knowledge effectively to the student. And today teachers are being asked to learn about teaching technologies of these skills and techniques. So that is what Sampradaya represents. So Ayurveda tradition is one which developed these teaching technologies. There are many Tantra Yuktis, there are many discussions on how teaching should be done in the textbook itself. This is called Adhyayana Vidhi. So we have the student is actually initiated into the whole learning process ritualistically to get that kind of mental involvement. And then there is a whole Adhyayana Adhyapana Vidhi. Adhyayana Vidhi is the learning protocol, and Adhyapana Vidhi is the teaching protocol. And then we come to Parampara. You already said it's a lineage, which is true. But there can be many paramparas associated with the Sampradaya. You have a teaching technology, but you can distribute it and make it into multiple lineages. That's how the knowledge is transmitted. Param aparam karoti. Param means very high. I cannot reach. It's beyond my reach. Aparam means that which is within my reach. So what is the purpose of parampara? If I study under a teacher, what was not accessible to me should become accessible. What was param should become aparam. That is what a parampara does. Param aparam karoti, continuously. So I did not know how to do surgery. That was a param for me. But after the teaching is over, now I become an expert surgeon. Now it is in my hands. It's just dancing in my hands. Medical skills are dancing in my hands. So that is a parampara. So you can see they were all focused on delivery and performance. It's not simply, when you look at our traditional teachers, we think, my father forced me to study Ayurveda. I tried to fight a lot with him. It didn't work. It didn't work out. I respected my father, so I said I will study. 2 or 3 times I tried to run away, but it also didn't work out. So finally, now I don't regret it, of course. But sometimes the decisions your parents make may be wiser, I think. So, yeah. I always thought that this is all foolish. I used to tell my father, what is this learning? People get up in the morning and start chanting verses. Is this a music school or something? I went to study medicine and they are simply chanting slokas in some tune. How will you develop medical skills in this way? Many years later, I realized that just looking at Devanagari script have produces certain effects in your brain. See, there was an experiment that was published in Current Science where they made 2 groups of people to read a Sanskrit sloka. One was in the Sanskrit script and the other was in the English script. And they did a functional MRI to see what happens to the brain when they are reading. So people who were reading the same Sanskrit verse in English script, only one side of their brain, few areas were lighting up. But those who were reading the same script in Devanagari, their brain was lighting up all over. So it is like you are massaging your brain. So now, after so many years and decades, now I say, when I chant, I'm just massaging my brain before starting a deep study. So if you start chanting, there is also a American scientist who did some study in the University of Trento, Italy. They made Pandits to keep chanting the Vedas, and they measured. They looked over there what happens to their brains, and they found many regions in the brain, like hippocampus, associated with memory. They were getting enlarged. They were rewiring themselves. So Ayurveda requires a deep study. You need your brain to be very sharp and alert before you can go deep into the analysis. So Charaka is telling first Vakyasha. The text should be chanted and memorized so that you are activating your brain also. With a very alert and altered state of consciousness, you are able to study the knowledge of Ayurveda. So that was the method of learning in those days. Today, no modern medical doctor will sit and read Harrison's and chant it. You cannot imagine them doing it. They just take notes. But in Ayurveda, we use this also. Use the power of Sanskrit to activate the brain. And that's very important because lot of knowledge in Ayurveda is coming from higher levels of consciousness, which you cannot experience in ordinary modes of awareness. So everything starts with a process of meditation and contemplation. And the texts were composed. And these textbooks are, high grade poetry. Vagbhada is writing one I was struck by that poetry. So luckily, I had some human sense in me, so I appreciated at that time a lot of this poetry. Kokilali kalalapa kalakola halakula. He's describing, spring season. So you can see his command over the Sanskrit language. Kokilali kalalapa kalakola halakula. The use of the word ka so many times. So much beautiful poetry is there. And then I realized, why should medicine be presented in this way? It's because a doctor has to be human first. If through the study of medicine you lose your humanism, then you're going to be a monster. Today we are trying to bring back humanities into the scientific field because to fulfill this. But Ayurvedic textbooks is already a blend of science and humanities. Everywhere they try to poke your human sensitivity because medical knowledge is presented as poetry. Is that not an amazing way of discussing things? I was once watching a serial. My wife was very interested in some of these medical serials. So it's Mentalist. So there, yeah, it's a nice serial. So in one of the things, the Mentalist is looking at a doctor and saying, "You are not a. This is a fake doctor," because she has compassion. In America, it is not possible for a doctor to come out of medical school with compassion. Because the moment you enter into medical school, a dead body is thrown in front of you and you are made to dissect that. You start by looking at death and you become indifferent to death. And then a pile of books which discuss about the human body very mechanistically, and then you lose your humanity. So you cannot be a doctor. If a doctor is compassionate, then he's a quack because they have not gone through medical school. In Ayurveda, we say you study life first, then only death. So in Ayurveda, instead of cutting the human body, we are taught how the macrocosm becomes a microcosm. The first thing an Ayurveda student learns about the body is how a new life is created. And then only anatomy, then only dead body. Because we are dealing with life. We have to first respect life. So when you see the effort of the universe to create a new life, then you respect life. And then when you see death, you look at death in a totally different way. You want to prevent death. You become a friend of the prana of the individual. The name for a Vaidya in Ayurveda is Pranabhisara, the friend of the prana of the person. You become friend with the life force in your patient. You want to protect that, preserve that. A good Vaidya never comes when you are dying. That's what I'm saying. Doesn't mean that a Vaidya will forsake you, but if prana decides to go, then Vaidyas cannot do anything. That was the concept. Atharvini Rangirasi Daivi Manushya Jauda Oshadaya Prajayande Yada Tvam Prana Jinnvasi. Oh prana, when you are alive, when you want to be in the body, then all medicines become medicine. When you decide to leave the body, yeah, the patient passed urine but also passed away. That will be that is what is happening in the ICUs today. People are dying in so much pain and agony. They cannot be near their near and dear ones. So they're on ventilators. So the art of dying peacefully. This is also part of Ayurveda. Ayurveda says if birth is sunrise, death is sunset. Make our deaths like sunset, which is also beautiful. If you live your life to the full, and then you can pass away like the sun is setting. The world will celebrate it. In Tamil Nadu, when people die, they hit drums and they celebrate it. But that is only for timely deaths. This is allowed. Today, what is happening is death is snatching us without any warning. Ayurveda says death comes like a mother. I think there was some poet who wrote this, "O death, where are thy stings that the seers have seen in thee?" We always think of death as something terrible, Yama, with coming and catching us. But death can also come like a mother and put you to sleep. Ayurveda says everybody will get the knowledge of when you are going to die. Nature asks your permission before you pass away. According to Ayurveda, there is no death. There is only Dehatyaga. You are asked to discard your body. Nature will come and tell you, its time is up. This body is perishing. So I have made another arrangement for you. Why don't you leave this? And let's move on. I know when I was young, some of the elders in the family, when we go for vacation, they would say, "Come, let me see you next festival. I won't be there." And it happens. They would die. Then they give you something special, express their love and all that, and then they are gone. They knew that they would pass away. But today, death is a shock for us. Today, death is coming, without any warning. This is called in Ayurveda as Akala Mrityu. Ekotaram Mrityu Shatam. There are 100 ways to die unnaturally. There's only one way to die naturally. And the whole prayer of Ayurveda is Vishema Devahitam Yadayu. Vishema Devahitam Yadayu. Devahitam Ayu is living for 100 years. Jivema Sharada Shatam. That was the mantra of our Vedic tradition. That is the mantra of Ayurveda. Let everybody live their full life and let them pass away. Raghuvamsha Kalidasa says about the kings of the dynasty, Raghu's dynasty. Yogen ande tanutyajam. At the end of their life, they leave their body by the practice of yoga. They don't die. It is possible for us also to live that way. We don't have to be afraid of death. That is what Ayurveda tells. So now the Vaidya's goal is to prevent Akala Mrityu. Let nobody die in an untimely way. So morbidity, mortality that comes because of bad lifestyle, because of wrong interaction with the environment, that is what we call as health intelligence. Health intelligence is what we need to give to the society today so that we can live our full lives. So this is the thing, param karoti. So we had these schools. So is that clear now? The concept of sampradayas and paramparas. So our schools can be called as sampradayas, means they had very well developed educational technologies. And then this parampara was so efficient that the student would become a torch bearer. I mean, there would be no failure. Their skills are, it's like studying in the best university. Parampara is a criteria that how the students perform. That is a criteria of a parampara, not the name of the teacher or anything. If the students deliver, then it is a parampara. If they don't deliver, if the skills are dwindling, then so in Ayurveda the parampara was lost. And teachers also, the teachers or thinkers are also of different types. Guru is somebody who may not tell you anything. Guru teaches in silence. Yeah. So old Ayurveda had such teachers. Student has to stay with the teacher and then they learn automatically. The teacher doesn't, he just create the circumstances for the student to learn. So Ayurveda says it is like, Charaka Samhita says that Artavo Mekhaiva Sasyam Shishyam Ashu Shishya Gunai Sampadayati. Just like the timely rain comes and makes the plants or the crop to grow, the teacher is just a facilitator. The teacher is not doing anything, he just facilitates. It's a student who is unraveling himself. Is that not a very beautiful thing? Because every student is like a bud. You cannot force open it. The bud has to, then there won't be any fragrance, there won't be any beauty if you force a lotus flower open. It has to open automatically. So the guru is only a person who is facilitating. Chitram Vadataror Moolam. I'm sure all most of you have heard of this verse. Yes. Chitram Vadataror Moolam. Vriddha Shishya Guru Yuva. Gurostu Maunam Vyakhyanam Shishyastu Chinna Samshaya. So that is Mauna Vyakhyanam. I normally used to ask this, which is the best language in the world? And if it is Indians or people who are interested in Indian culture or Ayurveda students, they'll immediately say Sanskrit. And I don't want to go through that process here. We don't have much time. But it's not Sanskrit. It is silence. Sanskrit is important because Sanskrit is the language that takes you to silence. All other languages makes you chatterboxes. Sanskrit makes you silent inside because true knowledge happens only in silence. That is the limit of communication. Yatho vacho nivartante aprapya manasa saha. Truth, the domain of truth is where the words and mind come back without being able to reach there. So you break your thoughts. It is anything when you understand, you become silent. The moment of understanding is silence. All the discussion happens. So that is why questions and answers. Today we always emphasize about questions and answers. It's fine. I think I heard this from Guruji Sri Sri Ravishankarji once. He mentioned that questions and answers are like couples without family planning. Guruji used to say that questions and answers are like couples without family planning. Because one question gives one answer, that answer creates another question, and that will give another answer, and there is no end to it. So he mentioned that a question is like a spade. Don't poke the other person with your question. Dig into your own brain. And an answer is only a help in digging. You will never get a satisfactory answer. Most of the time we listen to somebody, our mind is not open. No. So if you listen to a lecture and if the speaker is telling most of the things which you think is right, you're saying yes, yes, yes. Oh, very nice lecture. Because the speaker has just, affirmed whatever is your belief. If the speaker says anything which is against our, then you don't accept it. So there is no learning actually. So most of the time when you say good lecture, it means, that they have just reinforced your. So this is our problem. So the questioning has to happen inside. That is why Buddha used to be silent. You ask him question, he just keeps silent. In fact, the angels were worried that Buddha is not speaking. They went to him, please speak, because in once in a millennia, somebody like Buddha comes. And if you decide to be silent, the world will lose. Then Buddha said, those who know, they know without my help. And those who do not know, they will not be helped by my saying, they will not know, they will not listen. Then the angel said, there are people in between. So for their sake, please speak. So this is the thing. And unless we want to, so in our Gurukulas, Ayurveda, I studied in, my father sent me because that was the only Gurukula system experiment that was done, in Ayurvedic learning in modern times. We had to live in a forest at the foothills of, Anakati Hills, and having lived in a city, it was very difficult for me in the beginning to have the company of snakes, elephants, peacocks. We wake up in the morning, I am afraid to get out of my room because you can see cobras moving around, but there was no single incident. Nobody was hurt. Elephants, now they had to put electric fences because we did upasana sadhana there. And I learned very clearly that humans can have this harmony with nature. If you live in a particular way, this was like the hermitage of the rishis. As you reach the hermitage of the rishis, the animals are friendly. Everything is at peace. Aranyaka. Aranyaka means not at war. If you are not at war within, then you are not at war outside. So the rishis' ashrams are aranyakas. So you can actually establish this harmony. Today we are talking about one earth, one health, one earth. And some people said, I have a puppy in my home, I am taking. I said, this is not one health. If you have a puppy in your home, you are actually exploiting it. It is for your happiness that you are taking the puppy home, and then you better take care of it. See, One Health was allowing nature to exist in its way, not exploiting it for our needs. So in ancient times, we had these sacred groves. Why? That nature was left. It's very frightening. People cannot go near those sacred groves. Snakes are there. They wanted to preserve nature as is. That is what we call as one health. So you can see that in the samhitas, in the texts, sarva bhutanu kampaya, not just for human health, but for the health of the whole creation, for the happiness of the whole creation. When Shankaracharya was moving around, it seems a tiger came to attack him. And he just looked at its eyes with overflowing compassion. And the tiger became like a puppy and went and licked his feet. So it is, all the violence in our mind, in our uh, inner being is what war is first created inside. And then, it is fought outside. That is a message of the Bhagavad Gita also. The whole war is happening inside. So that is the message of Ayurveda also. So gurus are those who teach in silence. So that is why we were told we had to study in that college. And then Acharya. Acharyas are teachers, who teach by example. Achinotihi. So we know the definition of guru, is it not? Gukaras tvandhagaras yad. Gukaras tan nirodhaga. Andhagara nirodhitvad. Guru ritya vidhiyate. So that light that comes inside. And Buddha used to always say, Atma Deepo Bhava. Become a light unto yourself. That was the last advice he gives. Because a guru is inside. Kritsno hi loko buddhimatam acharya. So if you look at the teachers and traditions of, the thinkers of Ayurveda, Charaka says, who is the acharya? Kritsno hi loko. The whole world is the teacher for the wise. Shatruscha buddhimatam. So the whole world is the teacher. So Ayurveda has acknowledged even animals as teachers. So I want to introduce our animal friends as the teachers and thinkers of Ayurveda also. Zoo pharmacognosy was one school of Ayurveda. Charaka says, Oshadhir nama rubabhyam janate hyajapa vane. Avipaschaiva gopascha yechanye vanacharina. He says, go to the forest, learn from the shepherds, cowherds. And where did they learn from? Gandharva, Nakula, Sarpa, from snakes, birds. They have learned from them. So Ayurveda has acknowledged that we can learn from animals also. I want to narrate a story of a sparrow taking cigarette butts and lining it on its nest. So the researchers were surprised. Why are the sparrows taking these cigarette butts? Are they also started smoking? And then they found that the cigarette butts, after smoking, the nicotine undergoes some change. And that chemical is helping the sparrows to repel the pests that come and damage its eggs. Now, can any human being looking at the cigarette but imagine that this has this property? The sparrows did not have any laboratory. They did not do any chemical analysis. They just looked at the cigarette butts and they knew that this is. So, actually, there is another way. In human life, we have made things too complicated. We have to learn by spending so much of money in the laboratories, and still we get only a little information. Nature has that ability to convey information much more easily, and animals have that instinct. So it's increasingly being realized that animal behavior can be a very important clue in discovering new medicines. Especially today, modern pharmacological industry is in a critical phase. Drug attrition. No new drugs are being developed. We are in a Many of the modern drugs were inspired by leads from traditional medicine, but ethnobotanical practices. So, I missed to put the animals here also teachers, but animals are teacher, nature is teacher, and I will come to that now. So, acharyas are those who lead by example, ubadhyaya are professors, and then shikshakas are tutors, who just read a text and tell the meaning. They are also being acknowledged, but they cannot take you far. They just give you some, preparation for the study. What we really need to create as teachers are acharyas and gurus, who are, real transformers, who are facilitators, who can change people from within. So this is the thing, the word Veda itself shows this Guru Shishya Parampara linkage. Saptayam vidyade veti jnane vinte vicharane vintade vintadi prapto rupa bheda vidayami. There are 4 meanings of the word Veda. existence, satta. We are dealing with real things, not imaginable things. Veda is not talking about ghost or something which doesn't exist. It's about what is really there. Conceptualization. So, you conceptualize what is existing and then you analyze and experience it. This is the process of Veda. Satta, Jnana, Vichara, and Prapti. It's a cycle. So, the first two are related to Guru. This is how the transmission happens. The Guru, based on his experience of reality, gives a concept to the student. From Satta comes Jnana. So, the Jnana is transferred to the student. What does the student do? Vichara, analysis of what the Guru has told him, and gets his own experience. If this doesn't happen, there is no learning, there is no teaching. If the student just memorizes the Vedas and chants it, it is not learning. It is that experience that has to be transmitted. So you can see the word Veda itself contains this whole knowledge. So this is because we don't learn through Sanskrit. This is a problem. We translate Veda as knowledge and then we miss this beauty of that word Veda, which is derived from 4 roots, and then it tells you the whole knowledge cycle. So who is a teacher? Who has the experience? Not somebody who has got a degree. Today we can get a degree without any experience. This is the irony of the thing. Without any skill, you can be highly qualified. That is the way education is moving today. In those days, if you did not have an experience, if you are not experienced yourself, you cannot be a teacher. Only from experience can teaching happen. And the student can never complete the course until he gets the experience. There is a story of Jivaka. Jivaka was in the Takshashila University. After the course, the teacher said, everybody go out, bring some plants which have no medicinal value. And everybody came back very quickly, except Jivaka. For many days he was not there. Then finally he came empty-handed, very dejected. And the Guru said, what happened? Jivaka said, I'm so sorry. Wherever I looked, whatever plant I saw, some use or the other I could see. Some medicinal use is there. So I couldn't find a plant. Then he said, you are the only one who has passed. The rest have all failed. So Jivaka was the only one who completed graduation. So that was the way testing was done in those days. Today we answer a multiple choice question and we are passed with flying colors, is it not? We get NEET, we get everything. So this is very interesting. And schools and thinkers, the first teacher is nature. This is the message of Ayurveda. The first, and so Ayurveda is learned by reading the book of nature. Kritsno hi loko buddhimatam acharya. And there is a story, this has been unfortunately misinterpreted. Brahma, Ayurveda originated from Brahma. Brahma smrtva ayusho vedam prajapatima jigrahat soshvinau tau sahasraksham sotriputradigan munin te agniveshadigamam stetu prathak tantrani te nire. This is how. So when I read this, I said to poor people, these are all primitive ideas about, all this mythology came from the gods. I was very much offended by these passages. There was a time when I thought, these are the things that should be removed from the text and we must have a curated scientific version of Ayurveda. But later I realized when you go deeper into this meaning, the mythology was a way of communication in those days. To convey profound truths, they used these kind of mythological accounts. So Brahma is Brihvardhane, that is, expanding universe. Brahma Smritva, that is, this knowledge of Ayurveda is always in nature. That is what the texts are telling us. In human memory, it may or may not survive for long. We learn something, we forget it. But in nature, it is never lost. So the textbooks are saying that Shabdarubasya Ayurvedasya na nityatvam. In the sound form, in the form of words, in the form of documentation, Ayurveda is not nityam. But in Artha Rupa, it is in nature, it is always there because every time a cell is behaving exactly as per the natural laws. It is not changing. One day it doesn't say that I will rest a little. If our heart muscle decides that we are done, we are immediately dead. But without any deviation, these all the organs in the body are functioning as if it's remembering, what is to be done. Only humans, we don't remember our duties. We forget it. Did you do your homework? No. What happened? I forgot. I saw it. Our body never forgets any homework. We are only preventing it from not doing it by following a bad lifestyle. So Brahma is, what Ayurveda says is that the knowledge of Ayurveda is in creation itself. Brahma is the creator. So there it is not lost, but not accessible to humans. So said Brahma created Ayurveda in hundreds and thousands of verses and nobody can learn it. So in human form we made it in a brief way. This is how the descent of Ayurveda means. We discovered Ayurveda by observing nature. That is what this story mentions. Prajapati means it's like a factory. You have the protocol of making an instrument, how to assemble. Then nature assembles. Every time a new cell comes, you can see it follows exactly. It's the same identical cell that comes. So nature is always following those protocols and practices. And Ashwinis are also like day and night. So Brahma is the rule. Prajapati executes, these functions. And Ashwinis make sure that there is no deviation. If something happens, they will balance it. So Ashwinau Deva Bhishajau. You don't know that Ashwini Devas are living in our own bodies. You can even consider them as the autonomous nervous system, sympathetic, parasympathetic, one balancing the other. So every time something happens, goes on the rise, the other system will come and balance it. That's why Ashwinis are called Deva Bhishaks. They are in the Devaloka. Devaloka means beyond the human. You don't know what is happening. See, if the nature had given control of your heart to yourself, we would be dead in no moment, no time. The heart is adjusting so much to the rest of the body. Continuously, yogis are getting control over their hearts. They can stop their hearts. They can make it beat fast, they can make it beat slow. So in yoga, you get that control over your involuntary functions. So Ashwinis means that your body has tremendous ability to the inner healer. You can call Ashwini Devatas as the inner healer in ourselves. All the violations that we do, poor Ashwinis every day, they are bringing us back into balance. Are we eating food considering the necessary nutrients that should go inside? No. We are only looking at the taste. Oh, that is very interesting, nice food, so we eat. We never think about our body. So body inside has to put all this effort to balance. And most of the time it is succeeding. Otherwise we would have become sick. Somebody is saying, I have been smoking for 10, 20 years, nothing has happened. As if it is his great work or his or hers. You have to say that an amazing adjustment has been done by the body inside to withstand this assault, but it will not continue for long. Do you know sitting is the new smoking? Sitting is harmful. I'm glad I am standing. Because the moment you sit, electrical impulses in your body stop moving. Prana, the flow of prana is lost. If you want to sit, you must sit like a yogi. If you sit like a yogi, your pranic circuit is maintained. That is why yoga is so important. That is why in ancient times, everything we did, even sleeping, was in a yoga mudra. So that the flow of prana is not affected. Asya Sukham, Ayurveda says Asya Sukham, sitting comfortably is the. I always used to wonder why these modern chairs are all so good. Our traditional people were so not so creative. So the thing is, they created chairs so that we don't sit on it for long. They were not made comfortable purposefully. Today you sit on a chair, you don't want to get up. And they can take you directly to the grave from the chair itself. You don't wake up also from the chair. So this is the problem. So then you have Indra. Indra is Sahasraksha. So what I want to say is that each one of us can be a learner and a teacher of Ayurveda. Nature is the teacher. And if we open our minds, if you get 1,000 eyes, Indra is a Sahasraksha. He's a Shatakratu. By doing 100 yagas, he gets 1,000 eyes. With 1,000 eyes, you can learn Ayurveda, not with your 2 eyes. Now we have only 2 eyes. So first thing I tell my students is, see, I don't say you must get cancer of your eyes, but you can imagine if you had 1,000 eyes on your face, it would look very bad. It's not in that sense, but the capacity of your mind has to expand by 1,000 times before you can understand what is Ayurveda. This was how the schools and teachers worked. The schools were there to bring this capability. So I'm asking, how long will it take for you to study Ayurveda? Today we say 5.5 years you get a degree. Some people say lifetime. I would say you need only one moment. But to create that moment, maybe lifetimes. Because that one moment, when your mind opens up, when you get that Sahasrakshatum, you get the knowledge. It is totality you get it. What you are getting now is bits and pieces. When you get that knowledge, you get it in totality. That is why in our textbooks it is said, Jagraha Nikhile Nadav. When Bharadwaja went to Indra, he was the first inquirer of Ayurveda. Indra gave Padair Alpaihi. He taught Ayurveda with a few words. Matim Buddhva. He knew that the student was very intelligent. So he had to only tell a few words. And Bharadwaj said, okay, good, thank you. So he didn't have to study for 5.5 years. Today we are studying 30 years, still we have not reached anywhere because this inner transformation doesn't happen. So our teachers were all, they were champions of this transformation. Agnivesha was a student's name. What does Agnivesha mean? One who enters into fire. Please don't do that, because then you will burn your body. Agnivesha means the willingness to change yourself, the willingness to transform. That is the ideal student. So teaching is like a fire. That is why initiation was taken in front of the fire, in the witness of Agni. And Agnivesha says, yes, I am ready to change. Then the teacher says, if you are willing to change, then you can grow into this. Vidya samapto bhishajo dvitiya jadir uchyate. When the teaching is over, the physician is born again. Vidya samapto brahmam va sattum arshamatha viva dhruvam avishadi jnanad tasmad vaidyo dvijasmrita. So teaching was a process through which you are reborn again. That is why the Guru was given so much Mata Pita Guru. Your biological parents give birth to your physical body, but the Guru recreates you as a new person, at a deep mental and spiritual level. That was the education in those times. The Guru was more than the father and the mother. That is why, and the father and the mother, after creating the physical body, first 5 years you treat your child as a friend. You pamper him, and then you are given to the teacher. Because that is a formative phase. By the time your brain stops growing, you should have undergone this transformation. That was the old system of education. And then you come back to your parents, and then you decide, have you known everything about the universe? Are you ready for sannyas, or do you want to experience the world with awareness? This process was followed in Ayurveda also. So Bharadwaja is the first teacher who volunteers to meet Indra, and you can see this whole seeking of the knowledge of Ayurveda. The idea is that you need to, most of these teachers are also symbolic sometimes. There is a first World Health Assembly. World Health Assembly happens in the WHO nowadays, but the first World Health Assembly was, I am sure, in the Himalayas. It's a huge congregation of sages from all parts of the world of that time. They were seriously pondering. Vighna Buddha Yada Yoga Pradurbhuda Sharirinam Tapopavasa Dhyayana Brahmacharya Vratayusham Tada Bhudesh Anukrosham Puraskritya Maharshaya Sameda Punya Karmana Parshve Himavata Shubhe. So the rishis assembled at the foot of the Himalayas and asked, what is the solution for the disease? There is a pandemic of disease. So COVID is not a new thing. Even in those days, they are saying people are suffering everywhere. How do we find a solution? And then they found that somebody has to expand his awareness to get this knowledge. And Bharadwaja says, I will do that. He comes forward. So that step is very, very important. To get the knowledge of Ayurveda, we need these kind of pioneering thinkers and people who were driven only by Natmartham napi kamartham atha bhutadayam prati. The real scientists are not there. Einstein, Edison, they were real scientists. Today, science is an industry. You become a scientist to make money. You are thinking, those days, when Einstein or Edison was doing experiment, he had no lab. He had to sit on the road, or he had to, but they discovered knowledge which we are not able to discover even by sitting in the most, equipped laboratory, is it not? What we are doing is cheap work, just replicating some protocols and then getting a PhD degree and then getting a career and then enjoying life. There is no clear inquiry or inquisition. Research is truth hunting. We want to know the truth. Today we want only a degree and comfort. That has changed. So in olden days, they were in pursuit of truth. So you can see through these personalities, which is why I think these schools and personalities should be introduced to our younger generation, because then they know what really is the quest of truth. So Hiranmayena patrena satyasyapi hitam mukham tattvam pushan apavranu satya kamaya drishtaye. So who's a researcher is a satya kama, one who has fallen in love with truth. And truth is a difficult person to love. Truth just plays hide and seek with you. And it will always, because truth is wanting you to be desiring truth only and nothing else, then only it will reveal itself. This is called serendipity in modern science. Alexander Fleming discovered penicillin accidentally. Yamaivesha vranute tena salabhya. Ayamatma pravachanena labhyo. Na medhaya na bahuna shrutena. You don't get to the truth by any technique or method. To whom the truth reveals itself, they will understand. They will get to the truth. This was the spirit. So we do the tapas and then wait for truth to reveal itself. Most of these discoveries have happened in that way. Gravity was discovered in this way. Penicillin was discovered in this way. Most of the modern discoveries were discovered when the researchers were tapasvis. If you are not a tapasvi, you can do all the experiments in the lab, nothing will. The more we lose tapas, the more discoveries are produced. That is what we learn from this great tradition of thinkers and learners. They were people who devoted themselves to the pursuit of truth. So, Hiranmayena patrena satyasyapi hitam. By a golden lid, the truth is covered. So that gold truth will put before you so many golden attractions. And if you fall for that, then you will not get truth. When you say, I want only truth and nothing else, that is the only moment. That is what we call as research aptitude. Today we are talking about research aptitude, is only questioning. By questioning, again I want to quote Ravi Shankar ji, Guruji. He says, question creates violence. Wonder creates silence. The question mark, when we stretch it, it becomes exclamation. Isn't it? So science begins in wonder, not in questioning. Today, when you say research aptitude, we are emphasizing questioning is demanding. Questioning is needed. There is a way. Questioning comes from pain of not knowing the truth. Then it will give you the truth. Apradushtena bhavena प्रसन्नेन अंतरात्मना शिष्येण सम्यक पृष्टस्य गुरोर बुद्धि प्रकाशते अप्रदुष्टेन भावेन, no violence indicated. The way questions are asked in the Ayurvedic texts are a very good example. Charaka Samhita says, after asking all my colleagues, I am going to ask the teacher at the right moment, my dear sir, I cannot help it, but this question is really troubling me. Please tell me the truth. So there was a protocol of how to ask a question, not like today going and attacking somebody, asking a question. That itself closes your mind. Questioning comes when you surrender and when you have a wonder at what is happening in nature. So wondering, opening your mind, desiring truth, this is what we really can call as, the scientific spirit or the scientific attitude. So once this knowledge was discovered in this way, so our lineage of schools, teachers, they were all committed to this truth. Satyam param dhimahi. Dvidham khalu sarvam satya asatya. Tasya chaturvidha pariksha. Pratyaksham anumanam aptopadesham yuktischeti. So they harvested the knowledge of truth through a process of investigation. Charaka Samhita says, Pariksha karino hi kushala bhavati. It is not a belief system. And texts were written to preserve the knowledge. This is very important. In nature, knowledge is permanent, but in human mind, it disappears. So even if I understood today, tomorrow I may not remember it. So that is why texts are needed. So they argued like whether understanding is permanent. Once I understand a topic, will I always remember it? And you know Karna's story, not remembering the knowledge when you need it most. So our memories can fail us. So Arjuna with the prasada of Krishna says, Nashto moha smridir labdha, tat prasadad maya achyuta, stitosmi gada sandeha, karishye vachanam tava. Nashto moha, my confusion is gone. Smridir labdha, my memory has come back. Now I remember what I should remember. Tat prasadad, by your prasada. So that prasada of the Guru is very important. It means it's not the prasada of the Guru. We create it by having the right attitude, by being open, by surrendering. The knowledge, remains. And so the texts were written to preserve the knowledge. So grasping of the knowledge is called avabodha, transmission is called upadesha. So the only way to preserve this knowledge was avabodha, upadesha. Avabodha, upadesha. Not forgetting it, grasping it, transmitting it. Grasping it, that is why these schools and thinkers were created. And it is not enough that Vagbhada knows Ayurveda. Today, whoever is doing Ayurveda, they should become also Vagbhada and one step better than. So as I mentioned, the first text was a student's notes. I think I don't need to repeat that. Agnivesha also I mentioned. Sushruta Samhita was actually also in the name of Dhanvantari, but it came to be known as Sushruta because he was a student. Kashyapa Samhita is a pediatric school. It is available only in fragmented form. It is also known as Vriddha Jivaka Tantra, apart from Kashyapa Samhita, because Vriddha Jivaka was the the disciple of Kashyapa. But it is also correct to say son because Vatsa Susruta. The teacher looked at the student as his own son, or only sons were there. I don't know, for some reason daughters were not there in those days for studying Ayurveda. But today, if you go to any Ayurveda college, you will see only women students there, only girls, only ladies. So maybe nature is compensating now. In Kerala, I knew there were lady healers, especially for poison healing, which is actually not suitable for women of those days, because treating a snake bite requires a lot of skill, sudden attention, and also running out to see the patient at odd hours. But women were doing that in Kerala. So Ayurvedic tradition by itself did not have that bias, but at some point we have to admit that there was male domination. But in philosophy, Ayurveda talks about balance of the male and female. That's another topic in itself. Uh, because Ayurveda says that gender is only for the body, it is not for the self. Your self is beyond gender. So, in the mind, you are both male and female. In the body, you can be either male or female. Don't try to become both in the body because then you will be classified as somebody else. The body will always identify itself with one gender, except for some exceptions. But in the mind, you have to be both male and female. Your two brains, two sides of your brain, one is male, other is female, and everybody has that. So that is the Indian concept of a marriage, where the male is putting this kumkum on the head, and you can see it is put upward. So red is that Agni. Agni is the male element. So the male is telling the female that I will awaken your masculinity. But we think that today it is a symbol of slavery. The male is promising the female that I will activate your masculinity. And the female puts that sandal saying, I will awaken the feminine in you. This is the contract. So I think I will stop here because it is time. And there are many, many more things, but I hope you got a glimpse of what these great traditions are, what these schools are, and what they have in store. I hope this will give you enough inspiration to read more about these traditions.